So we have another grammar lesson for this week, and it has something to do with words that may show some form of action but are not actually acting as verbs. If we try to go back to our knowledge of the parts of speech, one of them shows or quite gives us the idea that there are words around us that denote actions. We call them as verbs. And the moment we use them in sentences, they do show actions indeed. However, verbs are not limited only to being action words. You are reminded further on that words that also indicate conditions or states of being can also qualify as verbs. This afternoon, we will again, as said, encounter words that may denote some action, a form of activity, but we will not treat them as verbs. Rather, we shall consider them as verbals. So we have verbals as our primary target this afternoon. From the word verbals, you could see the word verb. Because again, these words show actions or activity. It's just that we will not let them function. We will not let these activity or action words function as verbs. There are three kinds of verbals in grammar. We call them first as gerunds. Second one would be infinitives. And the third one is participles. And for this afternoon, our focus would be for gerunds. Years and years ago, I would pronounce the word as gerund. Later on, I realized that the word is better pronounced or properly pronounced as gerund. So I'll erase this so that I can replace it with the heading gerunds as our first lesson for this week, or our first verbal which we will have this week. Excuse me. If you have, of course, just a single word expression, you call it a gerund. But gerunds can be expanded into becoming gerund phrases. So you could have it as gerunds and gerund phrases. So we start with this. How does a gerund look like? Apart from calling it a word that shows an action or an activity, a gerund has a particular structure. It is one made by having a base verb added with ing. Please be very careful because there is another verbal out there that has this same structure. There is one more verbal, you will have that 2 weeks from now, which has this same structure. The difference lies on how we make such a verbal, this one, and that verbal 2 weeks from now, take on a different function. It depends on how it functions in a sentence. As for this one, gerunds and gerund phrases function as nouns. A gerund functions as a noun, a gerund phrase functions as a noun. And please consider this structure again. For example, if your base verb is deny, its gerund form is denying. If the base word is adjust, add an ing to it, it becomes adjusting. That's just the gerund. If you expand it and turn it into a phrase, Plain and simple, you add a receiver, if not a modifier, to your gerund. Like this. The word denying is again just a gerund. If you want to turn that into a gerund phrase, you add a receiver to it or a modifier. For example, you can say denying the case. In this case, we have a receiver. Denying what? The case. And this is not just a gerund, this is a gerund phrase. Modifier. I think it can still be seen if I write here. Yeah, it can. There. Denying strongly. Strongly is a modifier to denying. And sir, strongly, is that an adverb? It is. Strongly is an adverb here. We can use adverbs to modify gerunds because, again, gerunds are action words, activity words. It's just that we don't make them function as verbs. They are not used as verbs in sentences. We are using them as nouns. So this has something to do with, so far what I presented to you is the structure of a gerund, then to a gerund phrase. Any question with that part? Can I erase this? Okay. I'll erase the label as well, or the heading. And so we need to begin, sorry, with the specific functions of nouns. If we have a noun in a sentence, such a noun, or if we want to use a noun in a sentence, such a noun can be made to take on several other functions, sub-functions. For example, as a subject. For sure, that one was already encountered by us when we had our discussion on sentence patterns. This reminds us that when we use a noun, it should be the one being talked about in a sentence. Your sentence shall revolve around it. Your subject is the topic of your sentence. It's just that for this afternoon, we shall use not any ordinary noun, but a noun that ends in ing, which is the gerund, and perhaps we could try to expand it and turn it into a gerund phrase. Like this. Let's try to have a word. Let's try to have a verb and express that into the gerund form. Our base verb is take. No, not take. One which could stand as a good gerund. Let's use dance. Again, our base is that. I hope it's clear. Our base is dance. What is the gerund form of dance? We add an ing, and that is dancing. Now the first goal is to use dancing as the subject of the sentence. Like this one. Dancing is a great sport. In this case, our subject talks of dancing. Our sentence talks of dancing. The subject of the sentence is dancing. And look at the structure of the word. It ends in ing because it is a gerund. Let's expand dancing and turn that into a gerund phrase. Dancing with you is my dream. So you have here not just a single word, but a phrase that begins with a gerund and ends with the object of the preposition you. Sorry, preposition with. With you here is a modifier to dancing, a prepositional phrase used to modify an action word. Not a receiver. With you is not a receiver. Take note. With you is a prepositional phrase modifying dancing. Because again, there are plenty, at least two ways to expand a gerund, a verb. You add a receiver or you add a modifier. So here, dancing is still found. We have a gerund. It's just that our subject is not merely expressed as a single word subject. The subject of the entire sentence is expressed as a phrase, presented in the form of a phrase. It is in fact a, sorry, it's not there. It's in fact a gerund phrase. Any question? Question? Can I erase this so that I can proceed to another function of a noun? Let's have another one. Aside from a subject, aside from the function of a subject, nouns can also function as direct objects. And it's quite fortunate for us that the direct object was already introduced to everybody in our lesson on sentence patterns. There were in fact guide questions that we could answer. But since gerunds have something to do with an activity or an action, we shall only focus on the question, what? We will not go with the question who, because again, that pertains to persons. Gerunds are activity words or action words. And so we only answer the guide question, what? Aside from that, in our lesson in sentence patterns last week, we are reminded that direct objects are receivers of actions. They are receivers of the action found in your sentence. For example, the students like dancing. The subject of the sentence is, oh my gosh. The subject of the sentence is students. The verb is like. And then we could ask ourselves, the students like what? What do the students like? So we have that guide question, a what question. What do the students like? The students like what? The answer is, excuse me again. The answer is dancing. Since dancing answers the question what in the sentence, we shall call this your direct object. Sentence patterns lesson, if we have a direct object, that means our verb is a transitive verb. But our focus for this afternoon is for this part. But indeed, we have a direct object in our sentence. But this is just a single word gerund. We can still expand that and turn that into a phrase. Like, sorry. Yeah, for a while, something happened with my marker. Let's expand dancing. I think it can still be seen, yeah. Dancing. Can it still be seen? Yeah. Here. The students like dancing in groups. The subject of the sentence is students. Verb, like. The students like what? What do the students like? In the sentence, one word is not going to act as the answer, rather it is expressed in a phrase. You have the entire group dancing in groups. It is not a single word gerund, rather it's a gerund phrase. And all of this serves as your direct object. The answer to the question what can be found in this part of your sentence. Question. I just hope that while we are going over this discussion on functions of nouns, you could try to associate this to the lesson on sentence patterns that we had last week. Because that discussion could really come out as beneficial, especially that we're talking of direct objects, subjects, and other functions of nouns which we still have to discuss this afternoon. Any question, please ask. Anyone? If there's none, I'll erase this. I hope it's fine. Okay. If your noun could act as a direct object, that must mean that your noun could also function as an indirect object. However, since we are not dealing with persons in this structure, we will not answer the questions for whom or to whom. We will focus on questions like for what or to what. The DO is the receiver of the action, while the indirect object is the receiver of your direct object. So let's keep these in mind. Let's use dancing still as an example. For example, here, my team gave dancing a second chance. The subject of the sentence is team. Verb is gave. And the question, my team gave what, can be answered by something here. My team gave what? Claire, what's the answer?
Dancing.
Again?
Dancing.
Are you sure it's dancing? Is it dancing that was given by my team? What was given by my team?
Chance.
Again?
A second chance.
Second chance, correct. My team gave something. What is it that my team gave? It is a second chance. So this is your direct object. Now, for what is this second chance? Who or not who? What received the second chance? For what was it, Clarice?
Dancing.
For dancing, correct. Therefore, dancing acts as the indirect object. Familiar with the sentence pattern? S, T, V, I, O, D, O. Same sentence pattern, one of the 5 sentence patterns that we had last week. And even if you have to expand this into turning dancing into a gerund phrase, my team gave dancing with her another opportunity. In that case, my team gave what? Another opportunity. For what was that opportunity? Dancing with her. Dancing with her acts as the indirect object because it is the receiver of the direct object. We will not answer questions like for whom or to whom because we are dealing again with gerunds, activity words or action words, not persons. Can I erase this now? So how many functions have we had so far? Subject, direct object, indirect object. We still have 3 more functions to consider when we use a noun in a sentence. So I'll erase this. A noun can also function as a predicate nominative. What sentence pattern holds a predicate nominative? I'd like to ask Shania. Which among the 5 sentence patterns possibly holds or contains a predicate nominative?
You mean like the center of the sentence?
Sentence pattern. Which sentence pattern? There were 5 that we had last week. Among the 5, there's one that contains a predicate nominative. What is it?
SLVC?
Correct. The SLVC sentence pattern. Sir, why would you not call it complement? I won't use the word complement because in our discussion last week, your complement could either be a predicate nominative or a predicate adjective. Since we are dealing with gerunds here that are made to function as nouns, we will set aside the predicate adjective. We will be more focused into finding a predicate nominative in a sentence. I will not use complement because a complement again could possibly be an adjective. Let's have an example. Let's use dancing again. My hobby is dancing. Sir, your sentences are very short. Don't worry. We are going to start with these basic sentences. We will try to have something longer later on. My hobby is dancing. What is the subject in the sentence? It's the word. It's the word hobby. Is our verb. Now, can hobby be dancing? Can the hobby be dancing? Daniel, in this sentence, you look at the sentence. Can the hobby be dancing? No response.
Sir?
You look at the sentence. My hobby is dancing. Can the hobby be dancing?
No, sir.
Again?
No, sir.
You look at this sentence. Can the hobby be dancing? I don't know which sentence you're looking at, Daniel. I don't know though if you're really paying attention to what's going on. Please look at the sentence on the whiteboard. Daniel, can the hobby be dancing? If you look at this sentence, what is the hobby, Daniel?
Dancing, sir.
Oh, can the hobby be dancing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can dancing be the hobby, Daniel?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's why the answer no earlier that you gave is one which we could not accept. Because if you simply look at the sentence, it should tell you that there is no other hobby mentioned here. And it is the act of dancing. Remember these arrows? I don't know if you clearly see that. Okay. These arrows tell you that your subject can refer to this word, and this word can refer back to your subject. In our knowledge on sentence patterns, we call this a complement. Yes. But since we're dealing with nouns only for this lesson, we shall be more specific in calling it a predicate nominative. Predicate nominative. And if you have a complement, your verb is a linking verb. Sir, is not the verb is dancing? No. The verb here is not is dancing. Because if you say that the verb is dancing, are you telling me that the hobby is the one doing the act of dancing? That's not how it works. Logic would tell you that that's not what a hobby does. Because on its own, as a concept, as a word, hobby is a mere concept. It cannot do any form of action. However, we can identify an action that we could call a hobby. Again, is dancing is not the verb. Because if you claim that the verb is dancing, you are telling me now that hobby is the one doing the action. But that's not what logic would tell you. That's not how the sentence works. That is why the verb is just is. It's a linking verb. I'll try to have another sentence. Perhaps with a phrase, a gerund phrase this time. The chief's request was cooking the fish. What is the subject in this sentence? I'd like to ask Rainiel. Rainiel, our sentence is on the board. The sentence goes, the chief's request was cooking the fish. What is the subject in this sentence? Rainiel, what is the subject of this sentence?
Sir, I can't see it properly, sir.
Again, that's why I'm reading the sentence for you. Please listen carefully. The chief's request was cooking the fish. What is the subject of that sentence?
The chicks, sir.
Is it the chief? That's one thing that I mentioned in our lesson in sentence patterns before. Just because it's the first noun that we see in a sentence doesn't make it a subject right away. I'll call someone else. Nikki. What is the subject in this sentence, Nikki?
The chief's request.
Correct. You have chief's request. Or the word request. That's our subject. What is now the request of the chief? What is the chief's request? Erwin.
Cooking the fish.
Again.
Cooking the fish.
Cooking the fish. Here's the relationship. Can that request be cooking the fish? What's the answer? Jed.
Sir, will you repeat the question again, sir?
Can the request of the fish be cooking the fish?
Yes.
Okay. Mishaila, can cooking the fish be the request of the chief?
Yes.
And see, indeed, they refer to each other. That makes cooking the fish a complement to your subject. And to be more specific, since again, we will not just use the word complement, we will call this your predicate nominative. And if you have a predicate nominative, your verb is a linking verb. Sir, isn't the verb was cooking? No. Why, sir? Why is it not was cooking? If you want was cooking to be our verb, that means sorry, that means that the request is the one doing the act of cooking. In this sentence, is the word request doing the action of cooking? It's not. Rather, the request tells us that there is an activity that is being requested by the chief. That activity is the act of cooking the fish. It's not just a gerund, it's a gerund phrase because it too has a receiver, and that is fish. Cooking what? The fish. It's not just a single expression. Our predicate nominative is not just a single word expression. It's expressed in the form of a phrase. Questions regarding the predicate nominative? Sir, both the predicate nominative and the direct object answer the question what? What's the difference? Take note of these arrows. In fact, you could, like what we did last week for sentence pattern SLVC, you could interchange their placement in the sentence and your sentence retains its thought. What I mean by that is, you can have a sentence that goes, cooking the fish was the chief's request. Consider that sentence. Cooking the fish was the chief's request. Does that have the same meaning as this one, Shania? They do have the same content. They do have the same meaning. The meaning isn't changed. We could interchange the placement of the two in the sentence, the subject and the predicate nominative, because they refer to each other. That's the relationship that they have, which we could not see with a direct object and a subject. For example, I love dancing, like that, as simple as that. I love dancing. Can the I be the act of dancing? The answer is no. The I refers to a person, dancing refers to an activity. They don't refer to the same unit, except for the complement, the predicate nominative, and the subject, though the question what has also been answered. Questions regarding the predicate nominative? Can I try to erase this so that we can have another noun function? Okay. If there's anything, feel free to ask, please. Sorry. The next function is this. Object of the preposition. An object of the preposition can be found in a prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrase. You need to have a prepositional phrase for you to have an OP, or an object of the preposition. A prepositional phrase is composed of a preposition and its receiver, which we call the object of the preposition. For example, let's use gerunds and the word dancing. Sorry. Here's your sentence. They talked about dancing. What is our subject? They. What is our verb? Talked. They talked about what? About dancing. Therefore, about dancing is our prepositional phrase. And inside a prepositional phrase is an object known as the object of the preposition about. Sir, is it not the direct object? No. Direct objects are not found in a prepositional phrase. Direct objects are not contained in prepositional phrases. In fact, you can end the sentence here. They talked, period. So basically, the sentence pattern here is SIV. But please be reminded, it's not only with the SIV that you can have prepositional phrase. It's just by mere coincidence that in the sentence, our sentence pattern follows the SIV format. But much more attention should focus on the prepositional phrase, which contains dancing as the object of the preposition about. Even if you have to expand this into becoming a gerund phrase. Can I erase this? Is it all right to erase this part? So another one. While searching for clues, they found a dungeon. In this sentence, there is a gerund placed together with its modifier. Our gerund here is searching, modified by 4 clues. So we have a gerund phrase. And what is it doing in this sentence? Look at the word while. Sir, isn't while a subordinating conjunction? It can be. It can also be a preposition, which makes searching for clues an object of the preposition while. Questions? Go, Shania.
In ano sir, in number 2, in the examples, gerund or gerund phrase as object of the preposition, I noticed nga you included at the final decision in arriving.
Yes, because it is a modifier to the gerund phrase, the gerund.
But is it okay if you will not include na the at the final decision and you'll just underline arriving?
The thing here is, especially, thank you for pointing that out, Shania, because as you take your ST soon, it would actually matter. You look at what's supposedly found in that sentence. Is it just a gerund or a gerund phrase? If it's a gerund, just a gerund, okay. But if it's a gerund phrase that's all contained or found there, then you should indicate, you should underline, if the task is underlining all of the words that constitute that gerund phrase. Number 2 of that statement goes this way. All members of the group spoke up before arriving at the final decision. Arriving at the final decision is the gerund phrase, just like this. Before is a preposition. That is why the whole of that, arriving at the final decision, serves as the object of the preposition before. So does that answer your question, Shania?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's just that what we have in number 2 is not a mere gerund, but a gerund phrase. Other questions, other concerns? If there's none, I'll proceed to the last possible function of a noun. Can I erase this one now? Okay. Sorry. A noun can be an appositive. If it's not a single word appositive, it is an appositive phrase. Can it still be clearly seen? The whiteboard is getting a bit darker. We have here an appositive phrase. What are an appositive or an appositive phrase if expanded into a phrase? What is an appositive? Appositives, first and foremost, do not modify. It made the board a bit brighter. They do not modify at all. What appositives do in a sentence, though, is that they provide additional information, specific information of the noun it is trying to refer to. Well, I'm surprised. Oh, you just watch while I erase the writings on the. Ooh, look at that. I think this one is. I just cannot really erase this. I don't know what to do with this part anymore. Again, appositives provide some form of specific information or additional information to a noun it is trying to refer to. It does not describe. That's one thing that I've seen in some books, though, that they say that appositives describe. Because if that word describes a noun, that does not make it a noun anymore. A descriptor, a modifier to a noun in our knowledge of parts of speech is what we refer to as an adjective. However, it is safe to say that appositives provide additional information. They try to specify something for us. But that does not make it a modifier. That does not mean that it is describing something. For example, the board is not yet dry. I want that we could write already on it. Wait. A while, you just look at me while I erase some things on the board. I'm using product placement. I'm doing some product placement in my YouTube channel. I got my wipes and tissue from Watson's Philippines. Bekenemen. Product placement, ha? Product placement. Let's try to consider this. For now, I will not yet use a gerund as an appositive. Just to show you the concept of what an appositive does. My friend Claire is absent. Consider this sentence. My friend Claire is absent. In this sentence, we could, of course, just remove the name of Claire We could take out the name of Claire and we could have a sentence that goes, my friend is absent. But what does the appositive do in this sentence? It gives an additional information, a specific information. Sorry. It gives a specific information of who that friend is of mine who is absent. What is the name of that friend of mine? It's Claire. Claire in the sentence does not describe friend. All that it does is to provide an additional information, a specific one, which makes the name of Claire the appositive. There are two types of appositives. You can have an essential appositive or a non-essential appositive. Non-essential appositives are set off with a comma or a pair of commas in a sentence. Essential appositives are not set off with a comma or with commas in a sentence. We use a non-essential appositive if the writer feels that that specific information can just be taken out from the sentence and the sentence may live. We use an essential appositive if the writer feels that the presence of the appositive is indeed a requirement to convey a complete thought in the sentence. To know whether it's essential or non-essential, we could trace that back to the writer of the sentence. But at least, generally, when we see an appositive, you would find commas, or a comma, at least one, to separate that appositive from the other words in the sentence, from the noun it is trying to refer to. Now, we will have a gerund, or a gerund phrase. I'll not use the whiteboard eraser anymore, I'll just use wipes. Product placement, you look at the wipes of Watson's, they're that powerful, they could erase writings on a whiteboard. They're that good. So, Watson's, look at them. I hope Watson's finds this all right, that I'm using their whiteboard. No, this is not even from Watson's. This is Sanicare, and even malls in the city sell this. Product placement, Sanicare, look at them. And the whiteboard is still there. I'll use another one. I'm out of wipes and right issues already. Wait. This time again, I'll use a gerund, if not a gerund phrase. Here's your sentence. My assignment, cleaning the board, is so easy. What is the assignment, Claire?
The board.
Cleaning the board, correct. Here's that part. In fact, though, if you remove that part of the sentence, your sentence is just fine. My assignment is so easy. But if you are to ask yourselves, what assignment am I referring to? What specific assignment is being talked about in the sentence? What assignment is considered to be so easy? The answer is cleaning the board. And that means you have here an appositive phrase. Again, if it's just a mere word, it's an appositive. If it's a group of words, it becomes an appositive phrase. Now, do we have some questions? 6 functions of nouns were given this afternoon. 6 functions of gerunds. Subject, direct object, indirect object, predicate nominative, object of the preposition, and the last one, appositive or appositive phrase. Do we have any question? Reminders. Not all words that end in ing function or act as gerunds. You may have a verb which is naturally in that structure, but is not a gerund at all. For example, I'll try to type it in the chat box. For a while, I'll just put my headset on. Sorry. Can you hear me now clearly? Okay.
Yes,
I'm going to put something in the chat box now. There. The kids are talking about solving the math problem. The sentence is in your chat box. There are two words in that sentence that end in ing. The first one is talking, but that does not make talking a gerund, because talking in that sentence is part of a verb expressed in the present progressive form. Your complete verb there is in fact are talking. Not just are, not just talking, but are talking. What about the other word, sir, that ends in ing? So you are referring to the word solving. In that sentence, solving functions as a gerund, and it is in fact a gerund phrase. As it functions as a gerund, it is taking on the object of the preposition about. Solving the math problem, not just solving, should be identified, not just a gerund, because what we have is a gerund phrase. Questions, questions, questions. Questions, people? Any question? I think you have something of that sort in FT. What FT is this? In FT2, you look at words in FT2. You look at items in FT2. There are parts there, parts in sentences which are underlined because they begin with words that end in ing. Your task is to determine whether that underlying group of words is a gerund or a gerund phrase. If it is, you write yes. If it's not, you write no. Sorry. Any question? I'd like to bring up once again the concern raised by Shania earlier, especially with statement number 2 under objects of the preposition. Why is it that I included at what are the words? At the final decision, because they are part of the entire gerund phrase. So when you take your ST, be sure that you have identified the correct set of words that make up that gerund phrase. If what you have is just a gerund, then answer only the gerund. If what you have is a gerund phrase, then give the complete gerund phrase. Questions? Any question? Grade 9, do we have some questions?
I have.
Go, Claire, go.
For the gerund phrase as object of the preposition, the example number 1. So the preposition is not part of the phrase, the
Correct.
gerund phrase.
The preposition is not part of a gerund phrase because a gerund phrase begins with a gerund. A prepositional phrase begins with a preposition. The gerund phrase may be the object inside that prepositional phrase. I hope that clarifies something, Claire. Sorry. That's why for number one, we didn't include the word by. In number 2, we didn't include the word before. Number 3, we didn't include without. Number 4, we didn't also include after. Because those are prepositions. The gerund phrase begins with a gerund and ends with its object or modifier, while a prepositional phrase begins with a preposition and ends with its receiver. Questions? What other questions do you have? Sorry. Pardon me for the coughing that I had to do. Don't worry, I am not positive of COVID.
What's the pronunciation again, sir? Gerund or gerund?
Before I pronounce it as gerund, like the stress is on the second syllable. Then just not so recently, I learned that its pronunciation is gerund. The stress is on the first syllable. Gerund. Gerund phrase. Gerund.
Okay.
I still mispronouncing it as gerund. Gerund. Other matters, other concerns, perhaps you might want to raise them on Thursday by the time you check those items. That will be all for this afternoon. Goodbye and thank you, grade 9.
Goodbye and
Goodbye and thank you,
Sir
Sir
Sim.
Sim.